a quest as perilous as any they had known. Yet this time they had to depend upon Karawa and the dolphins. Tomorrow. Ross was still not sorting out his thoughts, truly aware of the feeling which worked upon him as a thorn in the finger. I will come. Good. If she recognized his hostility for what it was, that did not bother her. Once more she whistled to the dolphins, waved a casual farewell with one hand, and headed up the beach towards the base camp. Ross chose a more rugged path over the cliff. Suppose they did not find what they sought here. Yet the old tape map suggested that this was approximately the site starred upon it, marking a city, a starport. Ash had volunteered for Hawaii Key, demanded this job after the disastrous Topaz affair when the team of Apache volunteers had been sent out too soon to counter what might have been a Red sneak settlement. Ross was still unhappy over the ensuing months when only Major Kilgary's and maybe in a lesser part Ross had kept Gordon Ash in the project at all. That Topaz had been a failure was accepted when the settlement ship did not return, and that had added to Ash's sense of guilt for having recruited and partially trained the lost team. Among those dispatched over Ash's vehement protest had been Travis Fox, who had shared with Ash and Ross the first galactic flight in an age-old derelict spaceship. Travis Fox, the Apache archaeologist, had he ever reached Topaz? Or would he and his team wander forever between worlds? Did they set down on a planet where some inimical form of native life or a red settlement had awaited them? The very uncertainty of their fate continued to ride Ash. So he insisted on coming out with the second settlement team, the volunteers of Samoan and Hawaiian descent, to carry on a yet more exciting and hazardous exploration. Just as the project had probed into the past of Terra, so would Ash and Ross now attempt to discover what lay in the past of Hawaii, to see this world as it had been at the height of the galactic civilization, and so to learn what they could about their forerunners into space. And the mystery they had dropped into upon landing added to the necessity for that discovery of discoveries. Their probe, if fortune favored them, might become a gate through time. The installation was a vast improvement over these passage points they had first devised. Technical information had taken a vast leap forward after Terran engineers and scientists had had access to the tapes of the stellar empire. Adaptations and shortcuts developed, so that a new hybrid technology came into use, woven from the knowledge and experimentation of two civilizations thousands of years apart in time. If and when he or Ash or Karawa and her dolphins discovered the proper site, the two agents could set up their own equipment. Both Ross and Ash had had enough drill in the process. All they needed was a brick of discovery. Then they could build their wall. But they must find some remainder of the past, the smallest trace of ancient ruin upon which to center their peep probe. And since landing here, the long days had flowed into weeks with no such discovery made. Ross crossed the ridge of rock which formed a coxcomb rise on the island's spine and descended to the village. As they had been trained, the Polynesian settlers adapted native products to their own heritage of building and tools. It was necessary that they live off the land, for their transport ship had had storage space only for a limited number of supplies and tools. After it took off to return home, they would be wholly on their own for several years. Their ship, a silvery ball, rested on a rock ledge, its pilot and crew having lingered to learn the results of Ash's search. 4 days more and they would have to lift for home, even if the agents still had only negative results to report. That disappointment was driving Ash, the way that 6 months earlier his outrage and guilt feelings over the Topaz affair had driven him. Karawa's suggestion carried weight the longer Ross thought about it. With more swimmers hunting, there was just that much increased chance of turning up some clue. So far, the dolphins had not reported any dangerous native sea life or any perils except the natural ones any diver always had at his shoulder under the waves. There were extra gill packs, and all the settlers were good swimmers. An organized hunt ought to shake the Polynesians out of their present do-it-tomorrow attitude. As long as they had had definite work before them, the unloading of the ship, the building of the village, all the labors incidental to the establishing of this base, they had shown energy and enthusiasm. It was only during the last couple of weeks that the languor, which appeared part of the atmosphere here, had crept up on them, so that now they were content to live at a slower and lazier pace. Ross remembered Ash's comparison made the evening before, liking Hawaii to a legendary Terran island where the inhabitants lived a drugged existence, feeding upon the seeds of a native plant. Hawaii was fast becoming a lotus land for Terrans. Through here, then westward. Ash hunched over the crate table in the mat-walled house. He did not look up as Ross entered. Karwah's still damp head was bowed until those black locks, now sleek to a round skull, almost touched the man's close-cropped brown hair. They were both studying a map as if they saw not lines on paper, but the actual inlets and lagoons which that drawing represented. "You're sure, Gordon, that this is a modern point to match the site on the tape?" The girl brushed back straying hair. Ash shrugged. There were tight brackets about his mouth which had not been there 6 months ago. He moved jerkily, not with the fluid grace of those old days when he had faced the vast distance of time travel with unruffled calm and a self-confidence to steady and support the novice Ross. The general outline of these two islands could stand for the capes on this. He pulled a second map, this on transparent plastic, to fit over the first. The capes marked on the much larger body of land did slip over the modern islands with a surprising fit. The once large island, shattered and broken, could have produced the groups of atolls and islets they now prospected. "How long?" Karwah mused aloud. "And why?" Ash shrugged. 10,000 years? 5? 2? He shook his head. "We have no idea. It's apparent that there must have been some worldwide catalysm here to change the contours of the landmasses so much. We may have to wait on a return space flight to bring a chopper or a hydroplane to explore further." His hand swept beyond the boundaries of the map to indicate the whole of Hawaii. "A year, maybe 2, before we could hope for that," Ross cut in. "Then we'll have to depend on whether the Council believes this important enough." The contrariness which spiked his tongue whenever Karwah was present made him say that without thinking. Then the twitch of Ash's lip brought home Ross's error. Gordon needed reassurance now, not a recitation of the various ways their mission could be doomed. "Look here," Ross came to the table, his hand sweeping past Karwah as he used his forefinger for a pointer. "We know that what we want could be easily overlooked, even with the dolphins helping us to check. This whole area is too big, and you know that it is certain that whatever might be down there could be hidden with sea growth. Suppose 10 of us start out in a semicircle from about here and go as far as this point, heading inland. Video cameras here and here, comb the whole sector inch by inch if we have to. After all, we have plenty of time and manpower." Karwah laughed softly. "Manpower? Always manpower, Ross. But there is woman power, too. And we have perhaps even sharper sight. But this is a good idea, Gordon. Let me see." She began to tell off names on her fingers. "Bakiki, Vihola, Hori, Lilila, Tama, Yui, Honoura. They are the best in the water. Me, you, Gordon, Ross. That makes 10 with keen eyes to look, and always there are Tina Raw and Tara. We will take supplies and camp here on this island.